Who's behind the explosives found near a major gas pipeline in northern Serbia? Serbian officials say 2 backpacks containing explosives and detonators were discovered close to the route that carries Russian gas into Hungary. They warn the damage could have cut supplies on both sides of the border. Hungary is calling it a planned act of sabotage, but says the pipeline is still operating. Here's what Serbia's President Alexander Vučić and Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán had to say.
100 meters from the Turkish or South Stream gas pipeline, whatever you want to call it, Balkan Stream, they found, as far as I understand, 2 backpacks, 2 large packages of explosives. We also have some other leads. An investigation is underway, and I just had a talk with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán and informed him that if the gas pipeline had been cut there, Hungary would not have had gas, and we in northern Serbia would not have had gas.
Based on the information available to us, an act of sabotage was planned on the Vojvodina section of the Turkish Stream pipeline, which supplies Hungary with natural gas. I consulted with the President of Serbia, no one was injured, and the gas pipeline is operational without disruption. I thank President Vučić for the work of the Serbian authorities. The Serbs have strengthened security around the gas pipeline. The operation of this pipeline is vital for Hungary.
Let's bring in Kim Lane Scheppele, Professor of Sociology and International Affairs in the Princeton School of Public and International Affairs at the University Center for Human Values at Princeton University. It's good to have you with us, and we look forward to getting your expertise on this, having studied and worked on these issues in Hungary and Russia. What were your initial thoughts when you heard the news of the discovery of these explosives?
Well, my initial thoughts were that this sounded like a false flag operation. In fact, there was a Hungarian analyst who 3 days ago posted on his Facebook page a kind of imaginary scenario in which exactly this happened. So a lot of the Hungarian opposition was expecting something quite like this. So when we all heard the news this morning, the first thing we thought was, we know what that is, false flag.
Interesting. We'll discuss that in just a sec, a bit further, but let's locate this pipeline, the so-called Balkan Stream. It's a gas pipeline that is an extension of the Turk Stream, seen here in the map in red, and the gas comes from Russia and transits Turkey, Bulgaria, Serbia and Hungary. And close to the border with Hungary is the Serbian town of Kanjiža, where Serbian authorities reportedly found the explosives. Now, Kim, why would this pipeline be a focal point, particularly in Serbia, if the aim were to harm Hungary?
Yes, well, first of all, that area of Serbia is a very Hungarian-speaking area of Serbia. Many of the people living there who speak Hungarian actually have Hungarian citizenship and can vote in the election next week. But the other thing is that Orbán has been trying to build up the sense that there's a coming crisis because he's made Ukraine the enemy. Now, that sounds like a totally different story, but there's a pipeline bringing oil from Russia through Ukraine to Hungary, and that pipeline stopped working about a month ago when Russians bombed that pipeline. So this other pipeline bringing gas actually from Russia up through Turk Stream into Hungary is the main source of energy for Hungary right now. It plays very much into the line that Viktor Orbán's been pushing in his campaign, which is that Ukraine will attack Hungary through its energy grid. So that's why it's not surprising that the Prime Minister of Hungary has tried already to blame these backpacks of explosives on Ukraine.
On that note, the Hungarian foreign minister, as you mentioned, has accused Ukraine of being behind this. Let's take a listen to what he said.
This attempted terrorist attack fits right into the pattern of the Ukrainians' ongoing efforts to disrupt Russian gas and oil supplies to Europe. This was a very serious attack on our sovereignty. as an attack on our energy supply and energy security is also an attack on our sovereignty. But we will defend Hungary. We will defend the energy supply of Hungarian families and the Hungarian economy. We are fighting to ensure that Hungary's energy supply remains secure and that there is no dramatic rise in energy prices in Hungary. And for this, we need Russian oil and Russian gas.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's foreign ministry has strongly rejected this accusation. A spokesperson said on X, "We categorically reject attempts to falsely link Ukraine to the incident with explosives found near the Turk Stream pipeline in Serbia. Ukraine has nothing to do with this, most probably a Russian false flag operation as part of Moscow's heavy interference in Hungarian elections." Kim, if it were indeed Ukraine that were behind this, I know you've said it, you've also alluded to it being a false flag, but if it were to be Ukraine, how would an attack on the pipeline benefit Ukraine?
Well, that's one of the things that's actually very hard to see. How would that benefit Ukraine? It would benefit Orbán's narrative about Ukraine, which is that Ukraine is really Hungary's enemy. Now, this has been something Orbán's been whipping up for years. He used it in his last campaign in 2018. But even before that, and even before Zelensky came to power in Ukraine, there was always a question about whether the government in Kiev was properly treating the Hungarian minority that's in Western Ukraine. You see, it's not just in Serbia that there's a Hungarian community, but also in Ukraine. And both of those communities have been empowered now to vote in Hungarian elections. So this is something that Mr. Orbán really cares a lot about. They've turned Ukraine into the enemy because of the way they say it's treated the Hungarian minority. So having Ukraine, the central government, attack Hungarian interests in other ways is something that fits Orbán's narrative. Hard to see how it actually fits Ukraine's interests, however.
With it happening in Serbia as well, we'll come to the Hungarian election in just a second as well. But what about for Vučić? Why would it be in his interest if he were behind this, and as some Serbian opposition members have also suggested about this being a false flag, why would it be in his interest for this to be so?
Yes, well, Mr. Vučić and Mr. Orbán have been very close associates. They've had a lot of common dealings. In fact, the Chinese subsidized a new railroad between Budapest and Belgrade. There are increasing relationships between Orbán and Vučić. And whenever Vučić is up for re-election, Mr. Orbán supports him and vice versa. So it would not be surprising to find the two of them working together. Now, all of this is speculation, of course, based on what they've said. But it's hard to come up with any other rationale, especially given that, in fact, of course, the explosives didn't go off. Finding those backpacks in what the photographs look like as total wilderness in Serbia would be kind of a lucky strike on the part of the Serbian officials. So I think what a lot of people in Hungary are thinking, or at least the Hungarian opposition is thinking, is that this is something that Vučić actually did as a favor to Orbán in an attempt to blame it on Ukraine. Sorry for the complexity, but welcome to Central Europe.
Interesting. And as you mentioned, the elections are coming up. How much are you reading into the timing of this?
Well, Mr. Orbán is very far behind in the polls, and this is really the first time in his 16 continuous years in power that he's really had a serious challenger. The challenger, Peter Magyar, and his newly constructed TISA party are, depending on the polls, anywhere from 10 to 20% ahead. So it looks very likely that if there were to be a free and fair election, Orbán would lose. The problem is, of course, elections have not been free and fair in Hungary since 2014. Orbán has rigged the rules. But that said, a lead that big by the opposition is something that could potentially overcome even the very unlevel playing field that Orbán has set up. So what I think many people are assuming now is that Orbán is getting desperate and trying to do whatever he can. There is a provision in the Hungarian constitution that permits the election to be postponed in the event of a national security emergency. And I think many Hungarian analysts were saying today, this, they thought, might have been exactly a reason for doing that.
Interesting, because my next question was going to be that realistically, how much can these events sway voters in the final week? And you're saying it's more than just swaying the voters.
Yeah, so there is this potential to postpone the election. Now, frankly, I think that's not going to happen. First of all, the Vice President of the United States is showing up tomorrow. It would be highly inconvenient to declare a national security emergency in the middle of his visit. Also, there are election observers and journalists from all over the world coming to Hungary this week. To postpone the election for something that looks like a false flag operation would be highly suspicious. So I think they're going to go forward. But the problem is right now that, Orbán really doesn't have very many more voters to sway. The percentage of Hungarians undecided in this election is pretty small compared to the normal percentage. This persistence of the gap between Orbán and Peter Magyar has been persistent. Everyone seems pretty dug in. So it's hard to imagine going into this election that Orbán can really sway very many voters. That said, his voters might be more persuaded to turn up at the election, thinking there's something more substantial at stake. Peter Magyar's voters have already heard him say he thinks it's a false flag operation, nothing to worry about here, except that Orbán is desperate.
You mentioned the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance expected in Hungary soon. There have also been reports of Russian intelligence discussions about staging a dramatic event to swing the election. I'm just curious as to why this particular election has attracted this kind of attention from the U.S., from Russia, and actually they're on the same side this time.
Yeah, so Russia and the U.S. are very much on the same side. So from the standpoint of the U.S., Viktor Orbán's conservative, shall we say, far-right regime in Hungary has been the model for Donald Trump's Project 2025, which is his blueprint for governing. And Hungary is to the American right what Sweden used to be to the American left, which is proof of concept that you can actually carry this out in a state and keep winning elections over and over. So it would be a bit of a humiliation and something of a downfall for Mr. Trump if Orbán were to lose. Now, that said, Mr. Putin also has a strong interest in Hungary because Orbán has been essentially Putin's, shall we say, Trojan horse in the EU. It was just revealed by investigative reporters in Hungary, followed up by by journalists in Western Europe, that the foreign minister of Hungary, whom you just showed in that clip, calls Mr. Putin's foreign minister, Mr. Lavrov, after every European Council meeting to disclose what European leaders are thinking about behind closed doors about Ukraine. And recently, there were these leaked tapes between Mr. Szijjártó, Hungary's foreign minister, and Mr. Lavrov, where Lavrov calls up Szijjártó and says, hey, do us a favor, try to get these people off the European sanctions list. And then Hungary goes ahead and gets those people off the European sanctions list. So Putin actually has a willing ally in Viktor Orbán, who's been actually defending Russia's interests inside the EU. Putin only has Orbán doing that. It would be catastrophic for Putin if Orbán lost. So here we have this coincidence of interests.
I'm just wondering what you think we should be watching out for between now and April 12th relating to this incident or to any other moves that could affect the fairness of the elections.
Yes, well, the rules are already rigged very much in Orbán's favor. He's been winning elections ever since, 2014, 18, 22. He gets 2/3 of the seats in the parliament with sometimes as little as 45% of the vote. So, it's very much an unlevel playing field. In fact, many people say going into the election next Sunday that if Orbán can simply manage to get 45% of the vote, he will come back into power with a simple majority in the parliament, but that it will take Peter Magyar 55% or more just to get a simple majority in the parliament. So that tells you how unlevel the playing field is just in terms of the rules. But there's still more that can happen because we can tell now from various leaks that the Hungarian security services have been bugging Peter Magyar and bugging the communications system within the TISA party. So if they've said anything unwise or incriminating in the last month or two, you can expect videos, audios of all that surveillance to drop between now and the election. The other concern, of course, is that there's another trumped-up emergency that will provide some excuse for the government to postpone the election. And all kinds of things can happen in the next week. Already in the last few weeks, there were a bunch of scandals, including reports that the intelligence services had infiltrated the IT system of the opposition party to be able to listen into all their conversations. So every day there's some scandal breaking in Hungary, and we've still got a week to go.
I don't know if it'll be fair for me to ask this to you, but what do you see playing out? Just a final thought. What do you see playing out in the election or in the run-up to the election?
Yeah, well, until a couple of weeks ago, I had assumed that even Magyar's serious lead in the polls would not be enough to get him through Orbán's rigged system. But now the lead has widened to be so big that I'm not sure that Orbán can really defeat it, short of denying the election results or doing something other dramatic like that. So I have the feeling, I think the most likely outcome is that Peter Magyar will win, but he will only win a simple majority in the Hungarian parliament. Now, usually a simple majority allows you to govern, but that's actually not true in Hungary, because all the serious laws, everything from how the elections are structured to how every single piece of the Hungarian government is organized, requires 2/3 of the parliament before those rules can be changed. So if Viktor Orbán can hang on to 1/3 of the seats in the parliament, he can block anything that Peter Magyar wants to do. And that's on top of the fact that the Fidesz party, Orbán's party, will still control the presidency, and the president has to sign all new laws, so the president can veto anything Magyar's party attempts. And also Orbán's party controls the constitutional court, which can declare anything the new TISA government does unconstitutional. So there are two steps here. One is winning the election, which it looks now like Peter Magyar may do, absent some more dirty tricks. And the second thing is whether Peter Magyar can govern. And that, I think, is going to be by far the more difficult question.
Kim Lane Scheppele, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, Professor of Sociology and International Affairs at Princeton University. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
And we'd like to get your thoughts on the story. Just put them in the comments. Let us know what you think. And if you enjoyed watching this video, hit the like button. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching DW.